Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Govardhana Shri Radhe, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Gaurani Tai, Jaya Gaurani Tai, Jaya Gaurani Tai, Jaya Gaurani Tai. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev. Jayam Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyascha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, everyone. So today we are reading from Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 7, text 105. Tomara prabhave sabara Tomara prabhave sabara anandita mana Kabhu asangata nahe tomara vachana Tomara prabhave sabara anandita Tomara prabhave sabara anandita mana Kabhu asangata nahe tomara vachana Tomara prabhave word for word, tomara, yo, prabhave, by influence, sabara, of everyone, anandita, joyful, mana, mind, kabhu, at any time, asangata, unreasonable, nahe, does not, tomara, yo, vachana, speeches. Translation. Dear Sir, by your influence our minds are greatly satisfied and we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you can speak on Vedanta Sutra. Please repeat. Dear Sir, By your influence, our minds are greatly satisfied. And we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you can speak on Vedanta Sutra. In this verse, the words Tomara Prabhave, your influence, are very important. Unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. Bhakti Vinod Thakur has sung, Shuddha Bhakta Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Unless one associates with a pure devotee, he cannot be influenced to understand devotional service. These Mayavadi sannyasis were fortunate enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a devotee. And certainly they were greatly influenced by the Lord. They knew that since a perfectly advanced spiritualist never says anything false, all his words are reasonable and agree with the Vedic version. A highly realized person never says anything that has no meaning. Mayavadi philosophers claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this has no meaning. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never uttered such nonsense. The Mayavadi sannyasis were convinced about his personality, and therefore they wanted to hear from him the purport of Vedanta philosophy. Namo Om Krishna Prasad Krishna Prasad Buddha Srimati Priya Krishna Goswami Tanamani Namo So thank you for coming for class. I ask the blessings from all the devotees that I can speak something that is beneficial to myself and to everyone. I'll just give credit to whatever I'm speaking, what I've heard from other devotees and what I've read from Srila Prabhupada's books. So I'll just repeat what I've understood. Just before I start, I'd like to just mention, I listened to Vaisheshika Prabhu's podcast. He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he mentions that birds can fly as high as they can. So everyone is given some capacity and some degree of knowledge according to their level of surrender. So I will try to speak what I have understood so far and what I've heard. So one important thing that that really stood out for me in this purport that Srila Prabhupada wrote is by the influence. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. So just try to unpack some of this. So this Bhakti Shakti, Devamrita Swami often mentions this Bhakti Shakti, so the power of devotional service. Where do we get it from? So that empowerment to influence or to change someone else's life, the heart of someone, how is that, what is that scientific process by which someone themselves are empowered to change someone else's heart? So the key is humility. In Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentions the verse 434, Tadvini pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te dhanam dhanina tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So this is the key, this is the secret of how one can make progress on the spiritual path and be an instrument in the Lord's service and be able to impart also this knowledge and influence others' lives so they can also be happy and take up this process of Krishna consciousness. So here it says by submissive surrender and we also render service. So one may question, what is submissive? Does submissive mean that I don't ask any questions and I just accept whatever there is? No, submissive means we also need to be ourselves intelligent, not that we blindly follow and we give up our own individuality and free will. that is foolishness. We need to be intelligent, and we need to read Srila Prabhupada's books to understand how we can understand the spiritual knowledge, the science of spiritual knowledge, and who to hear from. So someone may come and they say, oh, do this, do that. I've been with the devotees for this many years, but then we look at their practice, and it's not exactly judgment, it's discrimination. So we all need to use discrimination, just like in the material world. When we are inquiring about how to fix my car, we use our discrimination, and we also do our research which mechanic to go to. It's not that we blindly follow, oh, this person's a mechanic and the sign is there, or it looks like a mechanic shop. We need to also use our intelligence. So in spiritual life also similarly, we need to use our intelligence, but at the same time it says in this verse submissively. So submissively means that we inquiring with humility, not in a challenging way, like, oh, I think I know better and I'm challenging you. And that requires humility, and also rendering service. One needs to do menial service. In the material world, when someone does menial service, it's considered to be very degrading, and it's considered that that person has low self-esteem, and they are worth nothing. But in spiritual life, we see that by doing menial service, we're actually making progress. And we also observe that the person who we are performing the menial service for, the representative of God, of Krishna, they are not taking advantage of our service. They are passing on that service to their spiritual master. My Guru Maharaj, Bir Krishna Goswami, he was talking recently. I was listening to a class, and he was saying that when he gets Guru Puja, or when it's Vyasa Puja, or like his appearance day, his birthday, then we worship the spiritual master. Just like when we have ordinary teachers in the world, we give them honor and we give them respect. So in spiritual life, we have our teachers and we give them honor and respect. But their consciousness and their mood, just like when we have our Guru Puja for Srila Prabhupada, it's not that he is becoming puffed up, look at all these people, they are worshipping me. But out of his humility, he's teaching us that when we approach someone who is very dear to God, to Krishna, then that person is given blessings. Just like we're walking in the street and there's someone is walking their dog, and we say, oh, what a beautiful, what a cute little puppy, and you pat it and give it attention. Then the owner takes interest in you, and he says, oh, this person's being kind to my puppy. He's giving attention. So it's like that. We are like, in one sense, we are the dog of the spiritual master of God. We are the servant. We are very faithful, and we render menial service to the spiritual master. So when we are worshipping Srila Prabhupada, he's passing that honor to his spiritual master, and his spiritual master similarly is passing on to the honor to his spiritual master, and it goes on when it reaches God. So my spiritual master, he says that whenever he is receiving that honor, he is not thinking that he's receiving it for himself. He passes it on to Srila Prabhupada, and then it goes on through that disciplic chain. And that's the secret to success, and that's the key to making progress in devotional, in spiritual life. So we honor and respect our teachers, and by their blessings, then we can make progress. So even materially, there are many like the self-help gurus and people who've been through hard times, but they've been helped by someone, so they give acknowledgement. It's not something that people do when if we don't give honor to the people who have given us this knowledge, who have brought us to where we are at. That is arrogance, and we're thinking that we are doing everything by ourselves. So one thing that really I remember and it stuck in my mind is something that Kadamba Kanana Swami said. He's also one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and he said, we are the product of the devotees' mercy. So the devotee never thinks that I am here because of my own doing. They always see that because I have the blessings of the devotees, that's why I am able to influence others' lives and help share this knowledge and pass on this great legacy that my spiritual master, they are thinking that Srila Prabhupada has given them. So that is the influence. How to influence an audience is when one, as much as they can, sincerely practice this Krishna consciousness, follow the instructions of the spiritual master, and render menial service. So devotional service, devotion means like love of God, and service, the key word is service. So it's not that one says, oh, I'm spiritual and then floating like that. Service means action, and action means that we do what the person is asking us. When we love someone, we don't just do something whimsically thinking that I think this will please them. If a spiritual master asks for water and is very thirsty and we think, no, I think I'll do something better and I'll give a glass of milk. But he doesn't want a glass of milk, he wants water. So we also need to follow what is being asked and not also put our own mundane reasoning or understanding on what is being asked. And I was listening to one class by Bhakti Charu Swami. It was on Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.18, and that was given on the 16th of September 2019 in ISKCON Ujjain, and that class was entitled Empower Yourself to Deliver Your Dependence. So someone may think that, oh, I'm not a leader, I'm not a guru, I'm not a manager, but we all have some service, we are teachers to some degree. Any guest comes in that, we are actually representing Srila Prabhupada, or someone may be a mother or father or grandparent. So we all have someone who's under us. It doesn't mean we have to be a big boss or a big guru or a big manager. So in that class he was saying that knowledge becomes revealed by the teacher. So it's not that just by reading the books. We have Srila Prabhupada's books, and in a way he mentioned that Prabhupada is talking through us through his books because he's given us these purports. But he said that when we connect with the devotees, then we can engage in devotional service. So the example that Bhakti Charu Swami gave, that's also Prabhupada says that just like a doctor, if you want to be a doctor and you get all these medical books from the library, doesn't mean you become a doctor. You have to go through the medical school and learn from the doctor who's learned from another doctor through the books. So that's why we have the threefold checks. Guru, that's the spiritual master, Sadhu, the devotees, and Shastra, the scriptures. So we always refer to those three checks when we're making any important decisions in our life. We always check those three things. And he also mentioned about what we were talking about, that the teacher gives honor to his teachers, so he's passing on that honor that he is receiving and the respect that he is receiving to his spiritual master and all the previous acharyas or the spiritual teachers. And he was talking about how empower yourself to deliver your dependence. So some people are parents, they are a mother or father. So also in Krishna consciousness, I've observed also when I was in Auckland and I was working at the Gurukul there, and also here, sometimes you see, not all, but you see some parents, because in the past in Krishna consciousness there was more emphasis on give up everything and just move to the temple and do devotional life, and then some people have come back later and said, I gave my whole life to Krishna and now look where I am, I have no job, I have no money, I'm just doing a cleaning job and that. At the same time, that is there, but when one is doing service, one doesn't think that I'm doing this out of wanting some reward. So we also need to be individually responsible, and we do devotional service, but not that we become in this mindset that the temple is going to look after me, and that we understand Krishna is looking after all of us and he's given us intelligence. So that intelligence means that we also need to be thoughtful and think for ourselves and take responsibility. And nowadays we see some healthy practitioners of Krishna consciousness where they're also getting some qualification according to their psychophysical nature. Some people are more intellectually inclined, so they go and study university, and some people are more like technically inclined. They want to build, or they want to go into like catering and cooking. So everything's there. So we need to also engage our nature in Krishna's service and be responsible for our own family. If one is a family man, husband or wife, we need to also see that how can I provide financially for my children, because these days I had read one article, teenagers who are growing up in the Krishna consciousness movement, sometimes they see devotees who are not also dressed properly, or maybe who are just doing cleaning jobs and that, which is fine to do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but if they want more, then they also not that we look down on anyone who's doing any kind of job, but if that their nature is inclined towards doing some working out in the field, getting some education, then get that education, but use it in Krishna's service. So when we are giving this knowledge to our children, then we shouldn't be also sentimental. You know, there's different extremes. In one extreme you have parents who just want to give only Krishna and that's it. And then the other extreme is that, just follow on the surface Krishna consciousness, come to the temple once in a while and then do your studies and everything. So there has to be a healthy balance in Krishna consciousness. We understand that we are living in this world and we want to also function in this world and be part of society. So we need to also be responsible and work in the society, but our consciousness is always on Krishna, because ultimately, even though someone may be well educated, have a great job, have a great house, have a nice spouse, everything, but at the end of life, if one doesn't cultivate spiritual life, then it's all a waste of time, and we have to come back in the cycle of birth and death. So experience another life, and if they're to some degree good, okay, fortunate enough to get another human birth. But if we misuse that opulence and then degrade ourselves, then we have to go down the spiral again and come back in the cycle of birth and death and evolve through the different species. And there's 8,400,000 species. So we don't want to get stuck in that cycle. So where's the healthy balance there? So I was watching also this one podcast by this devotee, I think his name was Raghunath Prabhu, and he was interviewing these two devotees who grew up in the movement. Forgot their names. They're in Vrindavan right now, but they're Indian bodied and they're from Switzerland. They're very young, they're 24 and 25, and they're actually disciples. They actually got initiated very young. They are disciples of Bhakti Swarup Damodar Goswami. And so there's 24 and 25, and the one who's 25, he's actually a professor at a university in England, and the one who's 25, he's a comic strip writer, and he writes writes comics, and he writes Krishna conscious comics, because when he grew up, his parents, they also talked about growing up in Krishna consciousness, where they also wanted to fit into society. They went to school in Switzerland, and then they also brought up things that they experienced in their life, like they had their lunchbox and they would bring like Indian food, and then someone says, "Oh, what's that?" And they would also feel self-conscious. So they also went through that phase, and they were also influenced by their friends. Okay, let's go out and do this. But I was really impressed. One of the brothers was sharing that I always thought that no, I don't want to disappoint my spiritual master. I don't want to disappoint, and they grew up with their parents who gave them Krishna consciousness. So the parents influenced their lives. So how how is it that they influence their lives? And they also mentioned that their mom would say, okay, chant 5 Hare Krishnas before you go to school, and they'll say, oh, why do I have to chant 5 Hare Krishnas? But they were saying now they're so grateful, and then that person, the devotee who was interviewing them, was appreciating that, because he said he has a 2-year-old and he's seeing like the phases of life, that okay, it pays off to do that. So every individual parent has to also have something where they draw the line, and also they need to see their own practice. Am I practicing Krishna consciousness nicely? Am I trying to please my spiritual master? And even though children may sometimes divert and be influenced by their friends, they see that ultimately it's only Krishna. It's as Bhanu Swami mentioned yesterday, what is our hope? It's only bhakti, only devotional service. So we can, it's not that we don't cultivate this knowledge and fit into society and function in the society, but if we don't have this Krishna consciousness, it's a great loss. And especially we have a responsibility. Some of us are already parents, or some of us may be parents in the future, that we give Krishna to our children, because ultimately this is only that is what is going to save them. And how can he influence them? Just like Lord Chaitanya, he's influencing these Mayavadi sannyasis, is by humility and by sincerely ourselves practicing this Krishna consciousness. So we need to also see, as in Bhagavad Gita it mentions that we need to also see how we are practicing this Krishna consciousness. There's austerity of speech, austerity of mind, and this austerity in our consciousness. So we need to see that everyone is individual, and we all have our own individual situations. We're all trying to also live in the world and support our families. So we see how we can practice to the best of our ability, and it's all progressive. It's not that there's any loss if someone is unable to follow to a certain degree, but by sincerely following, that empowerment comes from Krishna, from the spiritual master. And we keep practicing, we keep going on this path, and gradually we also become purified, and we can also influence others' lives, even if not as a big guru or a big manager, but just in our own practice. When someone sees that we're sincerely trying to follow, and we do try to do the right thing even when no one's looking, then that influence is happening, and when someone is observing that, their life is also changing, because they're seeing, okay, that person is happy, They may maybe sometimes not have much, or whatever they may be doing, or they're not in a big position, but they're happy. And that's what my spiritual master always says, just be happy. He always says, don't worry, be happy. And I always think about my Guru Maharaj Krishna Goswami. So I'll just end on that we just be happy in Krishna consciousness, then we can influence others in our lives. So if anyone has any questions or comments or corrections. Okay, thank you. Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.